Good morning, students, and welcome in Level 4 Business Class. Today we will discuss Lecture 5, Group Dynamics. Let me share the slides first with you. Lecture 5, Group Dynamics. What are the learning outcomes? After attending today's lecture, you will be able to identify the criteria of a group from a sociological perspective. You can identify and briefly describe the 5 stages in Tocqueville's theory of group development. You will be able to distinguish between role overload, role conflict, and role ambiguity. You will be able to contrast roles and norms and specify 4 reasons for norms being enforced in organizations. You will be able to distinguish between task and maintenance functions in groups. You will be able to describe groupthink and identify at least 4 of its symptoms. You will be able to identify and define social loafing and explain how organizations can prevent it. First, we will see what is group or group. A group can be defined as 2 or more interacting and interdependent individuals who come together to achieve particular objective. For example, a group of workers at an organization, group of class fellows, and why they are formed? They are formed to perform a task in a better way. Yes, they can be separate individuals and they can also be interdependent co-workers. Yes. And if you will see this picture, they are individuals on constraints. Individuals, they are under some constraints or they are without any constraints. And they have their own identifications and they have to follow some norms to do a job and they have goals which they will collectively achieve. And there are 2 types of groups, formal and informal groups. Now we will discuss these formal and informal groups. 2 types of groups and individual forms. They are formal groups and informal groups. Let us know about these 2 groups. Formal groups. What are formed? They are formed with under certain rules, criteria. These are the type of work groups created by the organization and have designated work assignment and routed tasks. The behavior of such group is directed toward achieving organizational goals. These can be further classified into 2 subgroups, command group and task or interest group. Command group is a group consisting of individuals who report directly to the manager. And task or interest group, it is a group formed by individuals working together to achieve a specific objective. For example, a group of workers working on a project and reporting to the same manager is considered as a command group. A group of friends chilling out together is considered as interest group or say members of a club. Yeah. These are the formal and formal groups, and further you can divide it into command groups and task or interest group. Informal groups. These are groups formed with friendship and common interacts. Yeah. These are groups formed with friendship and common interests. These can be further classified into 2 subgroups. Task group, those working together to finish a job or a task. It is called task group. And friendship group, those brought together because of their shared interest or common characteristics is known as friendship group. As it is clear from the name, informal group. They are not formed under certain rules, criteria like this. They may be formed to group of friends formed to complete a task, or it is just simply a friendship group. They unite together, they put some efforts together to complete a task. Why do people join groups? Now we will see why group organization is necessary. Why we form the group or why people join groups? There is no particular reason answering why individuals join group. Group helps individuals to feel stronger, have fewer self-doubt, and be more contrary to threats. It means they can face the challenge together and they can complete a task in a better way. Also, it is formed for security purposes. Status pinpoints a prestige that comes from belonging to a specific group. If you belong to a specific group, it will give you a feeling of security and you will perform work in a better way. Self-esteem transmits people's feeling of self-worth. When you are part of group, you feel self-esteem and you feel that you have some worth. Membership can sometimes rise feeling of self-esteem like being accepted into a highly valued group. Yes, it also gave you affiliation with groups can meet one's social needs and you can complete these needs jointly with the help of your other friends, co-workers. Group represent power. As it is clear, some people join group just to represent their power, to show the power. What mostly cannot be achieved individually becomes possible with group effort. Power might be aimed to protect themselves from unreasonable demands. Informal group provide options for individuals to practice power. People may join a group for goal achievement. It is not always that they will join a group to achieve some goal. Sometimes they form a group for some enjoyment purposes and they can't achieve the goal. But most of the time, people join a group for goal achievement. What type of functions they perform? In an organization, when we see the group perform these following organizational functions to accomplish complex interdependent tasks that are beyond the capabilities of individuals. Second, generate new or creative ideas and solutions. Third, coordinate interdepartmental efforts. Fourth, provide a problem solving mechanism for complex problem requiring varied information and assessment. Fifth, implement complex decisions. And sixth, socialize and train newcomers. These are the functions the group members perform at a organization. And uh, the individual reasons why people form groups for individual purposes, these are the following. To satisfy the individual's need for affiliation, develop, enhance, and confirm the individual's self-esteem and sense of identity, give individuals an opportunity to test and share their perceptions of social reality, reduce the individual's anxieties and feelings of insecurity and powerlessness, provide a problem solving mechanism for personal and interpersonal problems. Now it is clear from both these functions when we see that why people form a group for individual purpose and for in a organization. In organization, they usually do to perform work together in a challenging situation. They can work together, they can put their efforts jointly and they can share their ideas and they can complete a task. And in individual functions, they feel pride, esteem, and to face challenges and to satisfy themselves. That is why they form groups. Now we will study Tuckman's 5 stages of group development. Tuckman's developed 5 stages. He showed 5 stages that a group go through while performing a task. Tuckman's model of group development suggests that for a team to grow from a group of individuals to a performed team, it needs to move through 4 stages. For the team to be able to achieve peak performance, it will go through 4 stages called forming, storming, norming, performing, and then comes the last stage, fifth one, adjourning, that was introduced in 1977. Yes, now we will see what is it. as an individual and in a group. In the forming stage, during this ice-breaking stage, group members tend to uncertain and anxious about their roles, and they say, how do I fit in this organization or for this task? And as a group, they say, why are we here? What we will do? In the second stage, storming, an individual thinks, what is my role here? And in a group, why are we fighting over who is in charge and who does what? In the second stage, they think why we are here. And the third stage, then it comes dependence, interdependence. They start working and they say, what do the others expect me to do? They started thinking what is my role and what others expect from me. And in a group, they say, can we agree on rules and work as a team? As a team, they start working and they say, can we achieve this? And can we work together to achieve this goal? And then comes the performing, the fourth stage. Individual thinks, how can I best perform my role? And in a group, they say, can we do the job properly? And when they put efforts, they do the job properly and they perform their task. And then comes the adjourning stage. What is next? Then they start again thinking, our task is completed and what will be our next role as an individual and as a group, they say. And this is called adjourning. These are the 5 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, explained by Tuckman in his 5 stages of group development. Now we will discuss rules. What is rule and how it is performed? Yes, rule is sets of behavior that people accept of occupant of a position. That what type of work or task a person who is occupying this position can perform. It is called a rule. But according to Katz and Kahan, rules are standardized patterns of behavior required of all persons playing a part in a given functional relationship, regardless of personal wishes or interpersonal obligations, irrelevant to the functional relationship. And further, we can say role theory attempts to explain how these social expectations influence employee behavior. That these roles, these expectations that comes with the task or the role, and we can expect that what the organization expects from an employee in this role. Application of Tuckman's model. The Tuckman model represents a stylized view of group development process, each phase merging into the next without much delay. This is not always what happens in real life, where each phase may stretch for a considerable period of time. That is fine if the group has reached the performing stage, but less than ideal if it happens in any of the other phases. Yes, the other phases of the role, it is not ideal. And now we will see how roles are related with the person's work and how they are performed. Role center. One is role center. When we will say its practicality, one is role center. The other is focal person. And this process starts with role episode begin with the role center's perception of the relevant organization or group's behavior requirements. Those requirements serve as a standard for formulating expectations for the focal person's behavior. The role center then cognitively evaluates the focal person's actual behavior against those expectations. Role center, focal person. There are two. One is role sender, other is focal person. The person who receives these instructions, he perceived organization group requirements, then comparative evaluation of role expectation for focal person and focal person's behavior. And then comes the focal person and perceived role expectations, what focal person perceives the expectations from the employee or worker, experience role overload, role conflict, role ambiguity, whether he can perform a role in a single way or like in a better way, or he is overloaded, or a role is in an ambiguous position. These are the jobs checked by the focal person. Constructive, destructive responses. Then we will see what are its constructive and destructive responses. Yes, students, we were discussing roles and how they are performed, role senders, focal persons, and role receivers position while in performing the role. Role episode begin with the role sender's perception of the relevant organization or group's behavior requirements. After receiving this, uh, receiver's focal person responds on receiving and of the role episode. The focal person accurately or inaccurately perceives the communicated role expectations. Focal person thinks that he has provided information correctly or incorrectly. It may be after the performing of the job, he will check whether it was incorrectly. Uh, and he expects some expectations from the employee. And after various combination of role overload, role conflict, and role ambiguity are then experienced. Now we will see what are the stages while performing these roles and how they are done. Roles, role overload. Role overload is when others' expectations exceed one's ability. If managers give a task and he does not see the workers' abilities and workers can't perform the task, it is called role overload. Role conflict is when other have conflicting or inconsistent expectations. It role conflict, it means that you expect something different, but the performer is doing. Yes, there is a conflict between performing the task role. Role ambiguity is when it is not clear. Other expectations are unknown and the employee does not know what are the expectations and what the manager or the group leader or the supervisor is expecting from him. Task roles is task oriented group behavior, and maintenance roles is relationship building group behavior. Maintenance roles are generally they are performed relationship building in group member. And now we will say functional roles performed by group members. There are task roles and their description is initiator. Initiator is that person who starts, who takes initiative, suggests new goals or ideas. Information seeker, giver. Information seeker or giver. He clarifies the key issues. Information seeker or giver, he clarifies the key issues related to the description of the job. And the next is opinion seeker or opinion giver. It clarifies pertinent values. You get clearance or opinion or suggestion, and clear opinion seeker or giver, he clarifies these issues which are pertinent to the values. Elaborator, and elaborator is a person who explains, promotes greater understanding through example or explanation of implications. And a coordinator, he pulls together ideas and suggestions. Orienter keeps group headed towards its stated goals. Then the evaluator, who comes to evaluate the task done, whether it was done or it was not. The evaluator's job is to do the whether tasks are done or not. And energizer, prods group to move along or to accomplish more. He energizes, he gives energy, he motivates, he gives energy, he gives additional support to workers. Procedural technician, he performs his duties to handle the technicalities relating to the task. And recorder, he performs group memory function by documenting discussion and outcomes. These were the tasks related to any role. And the people who are doing those tasks, they are named as initiator, information seeker, elaborator, coordinator, orienter, evaluator, energizer, procedural technician, recorder, encourager, harmonizer. And when you are performing roles, and then comes the stage maintenance. How to maintain when you are performing any job, how to maintain that situation, and maintenance rules comes along with these descriptions. Encourager fosters group solidarity. He fosters group solidarity and always realize them that you are here to perform this task. Harmonizer, he mediates conflict. If there is any issue emerge among the group members, harmonizer mediates and resolve the conflict. Compromiser, help resolve conflict by meeting others halfway. Compromiser, he compromises with the issues relating to the task and helps resolve conflict by meeting others. Gatekeeper, gatekeeper encourages participation. Gatekeeper is the person who holds the gates, and he always encourages during the entry and when they are leaving, he encourages the participants. And then standard setter, he sets standards for the organization or the certain task which is going to be performed. He evaluates the quality of group processes. Group process commentator records and comments on group process dynamics. And follower serves as a passive and audience. Follower is a person who serves as a passive audience, who just sees and follow the instructions and follow the rules and regulations related to the work. Students, now we will discuss norms. What are norms and what is their role in organizational behavior or performing a teamwork or in the formation of groups? Norms. While roles involve behavioral expectations for specific positions, norms help organizational members determine right from wrong and good from bad. These are the rules which differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. Norms are defined as shared attitudes, opinions, feelings, or actions that guide social behavior. These are the these are the rules that defines individual or group members' attitude, opinion, feeling, or actions within an organization setup. How do norms develop? Norm develops in various combinations of the following four ways. These are the four ways how norms are developed. Number one stage is explicit statements by supervisor or co-worker. When supervisor or co-workers explain some statements, they follow the norms. For instance, a group leader might explicitly set norms about not drinking alcohol during work hours. This is a set example. A group leader or supervisor said that you can't drink, that I can't drink, and you have follow in the way like maybe it is prohibited during the, this is the way they set norms. And next is critical events in the group's history. These events can establish an important precedent. For example, a key recruit may have decided to work elsewhere because a group member said so many negative things about the organization. Hence, a norm against such sour grapes behavior may evolve. Critical eventually comes that any group member who joined, who was going to join, he did not join because a worker who was working in the organization, he said so many negative things about the working of the organization, and it affected the people who were going to join, and also it affected who are performing at the organization. Third is primacy. The first behavior pattern that emerges in a group often sets group expectations. If the first group meeting is marked by very formal interaction, between supervisor and subordinates, then the group often expects future meetings to be conducted in the same way. Primacy, it means when you set an example, like in a meeting, if it is done by a very formal way, the worker will follow the same thing in the next meetings. And if you will not follow the rules, or like in the very first meeting you are going to set an example, the workers will follow the same way. Carryover behaviors from past situations. These behaviors from past situations can increase the predictability of group members' behavior in new settings and facilitate task accomplishment. Carryover behavior from past situations. It means if in the past situation it work was done in a by putting more efforts or collaboration of others, yes, the workers will follow this, and they can, maybe we have to need more help and more, we need more hands to perform this. These are the norms that four ways for setting up norms in group working. What is the right or wrong size of a group and how groups are formed? Group size and composition. Two heads are better than one, but too many cooks spoil the broth. It means, it shows that more than one person for a task is always better. They can accomplish with the help of each other. But if you will put too many workers, it will not help because they will waste the time. And the now we will see what is the exact number who can perform in a better way. Work group of varying size are made up of individuals with varying abilities and motivations. Group members perform different roles on either an assigned or voluntary basis. Some work groups are more productive than others, and some committees are tightly knit while others wallow and conflict. Now we examine the importance of group size. The number of group members grow larger, shared norms will become weaker. As the number increases, shared norms will become weaker because of lack of communication and cohesion in a group. As size increases and as goals begin to become differentiated, it is clear that there is an upper limit to group size. What the limit is will always depend on the context, that whether this task need how many people, 10 people, 15, or like this, it depends upon the task. Homogeneous or heterogeneous groups. Does diversity in groups enhance or detract from their effectiveness? We will see. And earlier we were discussing what is the actual size. Actual size of a group is that which is which can perform a situation in a task in a better way. Too many people, if you will put, and usually they say the right size is 10 and the maximum 25 people can perform for a big task, maximum 25 they can perform in a better way. Now we will see what type of groups members have their bonds, like they are homogeneous or heterogeneous groups. Does diversity in group enhance or detract from their effectiveness? We will see this. Task related. Diversity can lead to greater effectiveness. Diversity can lead to greater effectiveness. It means diversity. Diversity means people with different skills, people from different background, people from different nations, people from different countries, like diversity. It is called diversity. And this diversity can lead to greater achievements, effectiveness, and great achievement. Relation oriented. Diversity can inhibit effectiveness, although studies found mixed results for each of these concepts. Relation oriented. If relation oriented, group members are relation oriented, it says they can perform better way or other way. Age diversity. It also reflects differences in values, attitude, and perspective. Age diversity. It means if people of different ages are performing, the result may be a different. And ethnocentrism can be a problem in heterogeneous work groups. Ethnocentrism, if people belong to different races, different tribes, different countries, ethnocentrism may occur during their performing the task because of mutual misunderstanding, because of their cultural values, or their the way of performing their task. It can affect their task performance. And now we'll see what are the threats to group effectiveness. There are three factors are described, and they are ASCH effect, groupthink, and social loafing. The ASCH effect: in 1950, social psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a series of laboratory experiments that revealed a negative side of group dynamics. Under this effect, we check the negative side of group dynamics. The Asch effect is subtle, meaning that it comes into play in many decision-making processes and exerts its influence differently on different individuals. People are more assertive will naturally be less likely to go along with the majority than others who are less assertive. It means, yes, under this, we can check the negative side of the group working. They say people who are more assertive, who puts more pressure or like the influence, and they can't perform with others who are less assertive. And it checks the effects of this group making. Next is groupthink. What the group thinks? A primary threat to group effectiveness, groupthink. Group thrives on conformity and stems from low confidence and trust levels. It creates problem with cohesive in groups, which in turn restricts moral judgment and puts too much emphasis on agreement and accord. Groupthinks tend to override realistic appraisals of alternative courses of action. Now we can see symptoms of groupthink: invulnerability, internet, internet morality, rationalism, stereotype, self censorship, illusion of unanimity, peer pressure, mind guards. These are the principles. These are the factors that affect group thinking. That they say we are invulnerable, no one can defeat us. Yes, they inherent morality, they follow some rules of morality, and they also follow some rationalization that we can perform this in a rational way or not. That these type of situations occur in a group. Like self-censorship, they put some censorship on their task. Peer pressure, they also feel pressure from the superiors. And mind guards, and mind guard what is in their minds, it also guards them how to perform this one. Group think, group while performing group think this way. And when they what is the outcome, what how it comes like, it comes like decision making defects. What are these? Few alternatives, they have very few alternatives. No re-examination of preferred alternatives. Next is no re-examination of rejected alternatives. Rejection of expert opinions. Selective bias of new information, no contingency plans. And the result is when they are performing under these factors, the result is they have very few alternatives to perform their job. Sometimes they don't have any alternative, and because they uh, because of the mutual misunderstanding, they reject group opinion, and it affects their work, and they don't have any plan. Yeah, this is what group think. This is the way group thinks affect this. Next is causes or region of group think. Group think, group characteristics, time, leadership styles. Group characteristics, time, leadership styles. And then it comes defective decision making, like few alternatives we are already discussed in the last slide. No re-examination of preferred or rejected alternatives, rejected expert opinion, selective bias with regard to new information, and no contingency plan. And result is decision outcome, what happened. And the result will be decision outcomes, the decision they made, and what happened. And if they they were performing under those factors, and they were not working in a cohesive way, they in mutual cooperative way, the decision will definitely affect their role and their position in a group, and they can't perform in a better way. Students, we are as we are discussing threat to group effectiveness, and these are as effect we have already discussed. Group think we have discussed. Now we will discuss social loafing. We will discuss social loafing. What is social loafing? First, we will see social loafing refers to a psychological phenomena which has brought forward a different side of human resource. It states that the employees working in a group underperform a given task in comparison to their potential, ultimately hindering the group performance. This is because they develop a casual attitude towards the assigned responsibilities by putting in their least contribution and thus relying upon the efforts of other team members. And in this way, we can also see these is group performing less than equal to a greater than the sum of its parts. And these are the explanation for this loafing. Explain for social loafing: equity of effort, loss of personal accountability, motivational loss due to the sharing of rewards, coordination loss as more people perform the task. Social loafing, it is the situation. Under this, we can observe that one person is not utilizing his potential, and he is not performing according to his responsibility and roles, and he is underperforming, and it affects the responsibility and the progress of the group. And we will see why it is, because equity of these are the factors. There's equity of effort, because there should be equity, equal assignment of duties, then it can perform. Loss of personal accountability, he feels that there is no accountability on it, he can perform any way worker. Motivational loss due to the sharing of rewards, and also sometimes he worker loses the motivation because he says the rewards were not given to him in his previous assignment, or it will be shared together, and that is why he less performed. Coordination loss has more performed the task, and as the coordination was lost, there was no coordination, that is why he was performing less. Now, so when does social loafing tend to occur? It When it comes, we discuss when is social loafing. Now we will see when it comes. The task was perceived to be unimportant, simple, or not interesting. There is a situation that the co-workers or any worker thinks that this task is not as important, and he loses interest in it. Group members thought their individual output was not identifiable. They think if they will, after the completion of task, no one can check that how much effort someone has put in the system, then they will contribute less in the group task. They say there is no criteria to check how much energy he has utilized, or how much his share was in the completion of the task. Group members expected their co-worker to loaf. Group members expected their co-workers to loaf. When co-workers expect that he will perform, the one person will perform less, and they are already aware of this, and everyone thinks in this way. This is how social loafing tends to occur, because everyone say that that person will perform and underperform. And now we will see how to enhance group cohesion, how the something uh, uh, that unites the group, that brings energy, uh, and that creates a bond in the group. How we will see that one. Similarity, background, similarity. It includes background, age, sex, education, skills, values. If you will consider these things while forming a group, increases cohesion. It increases cohesion, stability, and it includes longer time together, gives more cohesion. increases cohesion stability. If you are longer in a work position or in an organization, and while performing forming a group, if you put the same people, it enhance the stability. Size, small group are likely to have more cohesive forces. That it says that if the number is small, they will be more united. Sport can strengthen the sense of cohesion. Additional sport can also increase cohesion. Satisfaction with others in a group increases cohesion. Satisfaction with others in the group increases cohesion. If you are satisfied with others, if you are satisfied with the feelings others have with you, then it will increase cohesion. It means it will increase unitedness in a group, and you will perform in a better way to do the assigned job. This is what we were talking about, how to do group cohesion. It is if you will form group with the similar people who can perform the job, you know that these people can perform this task in a better way, and you perform that, you form that group. It will increase cohesion. Stability, longer period of work. Size, if the number of people in a group are relevant, uh, small size usually work increases cohesiveness. Sport, additional sport and satisfaction in the groups, they also these are elements work for increasing the cohesion in groups, and this way group perform in a better way. Students, we discuss what are groups, different theories, how they perform, what are the its types, formal, informal, and what were the factors that affect group formation, and how the cohesion can be increased. We discussed all these factors in today's lecture. In next lecture we will discuss tomorrow. Thank you for joining this class.